You can feel it building again in the Bay, that quiet buzz that usually means something important is about to happen, and this time it's tied directly to a name this franchise has leaned on for years. Stephen Curry is back, and it's lining up perfectly with a matchup that suddenly feels heavier than a regular season game should in early April. Monday night, April 6th. Warriors versus Rockets isn't just another date on the schedule. It's one of those games where context changes everything, because Golden State isn't just getting a player back, they're getting their identity back, and that matters when you're trying to stabilize a season that's been all over the place. Houston comes in looking like the more stable group right now. No way around it. They've stacked wins, they're playing with pace, confidence, and a level of execution that's been consistent for weeks. And that blowout over Utah wasn't just another win, it showed how clean their offense can look when everything clicks. Ball movement sharp, spacing right, shots falling without hesitation. And what stands out with this Rockets team is how balanced they've become. You've got a veteran presence setting the tone every night, while younger guys like Alperen Sengun and Amen Thompson bring energy on both ends. And it's not forced. It feels natural, like roles are clearly defined and everyone understands where they fit when the game tightens up. They've already locked in a playoff spot again, and that says a lot about how far they've come, because now it's not about sneaking in. It's about positioning, climbing the standings, and proving they're not just a feel-good story, but a real problem in the West if they get the right matchup. On the other side, the Warriors have been trying to survive more than anything lately. Injuries hit them at the worst possible moments, and when Curry went down, you could see the ripple effect immediately. The offense lost rhythm, spacing looked off, and that usual flow just wasn't there anymore. Right, always with Curry, if you believe he can still lead the Warriors to another great season. Because without him, it hasn't just been about missing points, it's been about missing control, and that's where Golden State struggled. Possessions felt rushed, shot selection got inconsistent, and the numbers backed it up, efficiency dipped, and the results followed. Still, they didn't fold completely, and that's something that deserves attention. Younger pieces stepped in, Draymond kept things organized defensively, and even in losses, you could see they were trying to hold on to something, trying to stay within reach until their leader came back. Now that moment is here, and Curry returning changes everything immediately, not just because of the scoring, but because of the way he bends defenses without even touching the ball. The gravity he brings opens up space that simply wasn't there before. He's still putting up over 27 a night this season, and at this stage of his career, that's not normal. That's someone still operating at an elite level, and more importantly, someone who understands exactly when to take over and when to let the game come to him. And if you remember the last time these two teams met back in March, the Warriors actually pulled it off without him. That overtime win showed something about their depth. Guys like Brandon Podziemski stepped up, filled gaps, made plays when it mattered, and that's the kind of internal confidence you can't fake. But this time it's different, because now you're adding Curry back into that mix, and that shifts the pressure right back onto Houston, especially on the perimeter, where his presence alone forces adjustments before the first shot even goes up. That's where this matchup starts to get uncomfortable for the Rockets, because it's no longer just about staying disciplined, it's about reacting to something you can't fully simulate in practice, and that usually shows up early, first quarter, first few possessions, where rotations either hold or break. Golden State is expected to lean right back into what made them dangerous for so long. Quick decisions, constant motion, spacing that stretches defenses until something gives, and with Curry orchestrating that rhythm again, the timing of everything sharpens, passes arrive cleaner, shooters get better looks, and suddenly the margin for error shrinks. Houston, though, isn't walking into this blind. They've been one of the more physical teams lately, and if they manage to speed the game up, turn this into a transition-heavy night, they can pull the Warriors out of that comfort zone, especially by attacking inside and forcing defensive adjustments that collapse the floor. That's where Sengun becomes a real factor, not just scoring, but drawing attention in the paint, creating second-chance opportunities, and if Golden State doesn't control the glass, this can tilt quickly because Houston thrives when possessions extend and defenses start scrambling. There's also something to watch in how both coaching staffs approach this, because this isn't just talent versus talent, it's about timing substitutions, managing runs, knowing exactly when to slow things down or push the pace, and those small decisions tend to swing games like this more than people realize. If you're part of Warriors Nation and you want to follow every chapter of this team's journey, subscribe now. Comment, "The Bay still believes," if you trust that Golden State can rise again. And then there's the arena factor, because Chase Center, when it senses a moment like this, tends to lift the energy in a way that feeds directly into how the Warriors play, especially when momentum starts building and shots begin to fall in rhythm. At the same time, Houston has been composed on the road, and that's part of why they've climbed to where they are. They don't panic easily, they stick to their structure, and if they weather that early surge, they can settle into the game and make it a possession-by-possession battle. What makes this one even heavier is what's sitting behind it: standings, positioning, and the pressure of the Western Conference tightening up, where a single result can shift matchups and change the path ahead, and both teams are fully aware of that. So this isn't just about who plays better, it's about who handles the moment better, who adjusts faster, and who executes when things get tight late in the fourth, because that's where games like this usually land. And if you've been following this team closely, now's the moment to stay locked in, because what happens here could set the tone for everything that comes next, and the next update on this situation might shift the entire conversation around this roster. So make sure you're subscribed right now, because when that next piece drops, you're going to want it immediately, not after everyone else has already caught on. There's also a layer here that doesn't show up on the stat sheet, and that's the psychological shift that comes with seeing number 30 back on the floor, because opponents prepare for it, but once it's real, once he starts moving without the ball and pulling defenders out of position, it changes the feel of every possession. For Golden State, that confidence spreads quickly, shooters become more decisive, cutters move with purpose, and the hesitation that showed up during his absence starts to disappear, which is often the difference between a decent offense and one that can suddenly go on a 12-2 run without warning. Houston's challenge is staying composed through those swings, because they've built their success on structure and efficiency, and if that structure cracks even for a few minutes, the Warriors are one of the few teams that can stretch that gap before you have time to react. Amen Thompson's activity on the defensive end could be key here, especially if he's tasked with disrupting passing lanes and applying pressure at the point of attack, while Sengun's ability to facilitate from the post might force Golden State into tougher defensive decisions than they'd prefer. And then there's the closing stretch, where experience usually starts to separate teams, and that's where the Warriors still hold an edge, not just because of Curry, but because they've been in these moments over and over again. They recognize the tempo, the spacing, the timing of a final shot or a crucial stop, right? Never count out the Warriors. If you know this team always finds a way to compete. But nothing about this feels predictable, because Houston isn't the same group from previous seasons. They're deeper, more disciplined, and they're not walking into this matchup expecting anything less than a statement opportunity against a team that used to dominate this rivalry. If Golden State controls the perimeter and limits second chances, the game leans in their direction, but if Houston dictates pace and turns this into a physical, fast-moving contest, it could flip just as quickly, and that tension is what makes this one stand out from the rest of the schedule. So keep your eyes on how this starts, because the opening minutes might quietly reveal everything: rotations, energy, decision-making, all the details that usually decide games long before the final buzzer. And if you're following this closely, this is exactly the kind of stretch where things evolve fast, narratives shift, and one performance can change how the entire league views a team overnight. So stay connected here and subscribe now while it's building, because the next breakdown is already shaping up to go deeper into what this result really means moving forward, and you won't want to miss how it all unfolds. If you're a real Warriors fan and want to stay updated on everything happening with this team, subscribe now, because things could get interesting very soon. What makes this even more intriguing is how quickly narratives can flip with one performance, especially when Curry is involved, because if he comes back sharp, Not just scoring, but controlling pace, it immediately forces the league to look at Golden State differently again. At the same time, if Houston holds firm, matches that energy, and executes late, it reinforces the idea that they're ready for bigger stages, not just participating, but pushing towards something real in the West. Comment, this story isn't finished yet if you think the Warriors still have another chapter to write. Either way, this isn't the kind of game that fades after the final buzzer. It carries forward into the next matchup, the next adjustment, the next storyline that starts building right after this one ends. If you want to stay ahead of every shift, every update, and every behind-the-scenes angle that doesn't make headlines right away, subscribe now and stay locked in, because what's coming next could redefine how this season is remembered.